Comics compatriots. Thank you for joining us. If this is your first time or if you're a returning guest, thank you. We have Tre and Sam from Raze Comics. How you guys doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. Yourself?
Always good. So you guys have this amazing comic. I love it. It's so fun. Raze is just, it's this whole other ball of energy. I mean, you start off with this kind of horror story, Walking Dead type, but it takes place at the first two issues, or is it three, on that bridge?
Yeah, the third one I would say is still on the bridge, so it'd be the first three, I would say, yeah.
Oh, it's just so exciting. And I remember thinking when my coworker, Jared, he first told me about that, I was like, how much could go on a bridge?
Right.
And then he's like, you ever watch Final Destination? I'm like, good point. So I was like, oh, there's a lot going on. Yeah. It keeps it going, too. I was actually kind of wanting to know a little bit about how you guys come up with everything. You guys are co-creators and both writers. Can you walk us through a typical workflow of creating this comic book?
All right. Loaded question. It's a lot of back and forward. I mean, we kind of had the story written for a while. Like, we started writing this back in 2007. I believe around there. So we had this kind of choppy, rough version that we kind of reference. But when we're coming up with things for now, we try to establish these points in the story. This is the important point. This definitely needs to happen. It's more of a question of how do we get from point A to point B. He'll throw an idea out there. He'll throw another idea out there. A third one.
A third one. A fourth one. A fifth one. And then the sixth one he thinks about. Yeah, not all of them are good, but I mean,
it's still an idea though. So credit to him. So once we do that, we find one that sticks, and it's really how does that play out? Is it something that it's just going to happen for this issue, this arc? Is this going to play out throughout the entire story? Okay, once we have that, other characters, we get into dialogue. So it's just kind of layers, just adding on layers and layers and layers until we get the finalized product.
To add to that, I think when we first started this comic, we kind of wrote it almost like a movie. Like, you can see the beginning, the middle, and the end. And I think as we've gone through these issues, we've kind of made them more thematically charged in a sense of, like, each issue you're getting, it has some sort of theme or some sort of meaning or idea behind it. And that's what we try to do, I think, every issue moving forward. Obviously, there's a bigger story happening, but from issue to issue, you're only getting really like a chapter at a time. So we try to really just condense in that issue what we're trying to, what the point of this issue is and what we're trying to get across. And I will say, as far as how the workflow goes, he calls me an idea machine, but there's certain things when we write out this story and things that we don't even really notice, and we go back and then we're able to explore a deeper element of that story that we maybe didn't consider. So I would almost say, I don't know if he's an editor, but going back and finding almost like a loophole or an opening in the story where hey, we didn't expose this. Why don't we put this in the next issue? Why don't we put this in a story or a storyline coming up where it could be really interesting? So, I mean, I hate to compare, but it's almost like that South Park method where they make an episode 5 minutes before they go to air. That's kind of, I mean, we don't try to do it, but it's happened so many times. We're like, shit, we probably shouldn't do this, but when we do it, it comes out really good. So it's just, it's one of those things where it's kind of on the fly, unfortunately.
How do you divide tasks and responsibilities when working on Raze? Who approves the thumbnail sketches or the pencils or the inks or the colors when working with the rest of your team?
So it's cool because it's kind of changed since issue 1 to now. Issue 1, Tre did a lot of the art. Issue 2, 3, 4, he was doing all of the final shading. Making sure things looked a certain way stylistically. And then issue 5, he ended up drawing the whole issue. Now issue 6, we have a new artist, and he stepped back, and now we're more focused on the story. We still do have our hands dipped into the art style and how things should look. We kind of get the final say in how we want certain panels or certain pages to feel. But for the most part, it's kind of I would compare it to any YouTube video you watch where you're a writer and you have I would say a certain amount of time where you're good at it. And then once you go past that time, you're like, all right, I need to step away from the computer or I need a break. Good thing is like we work very hands-on, me and Trey. So it's like when I feel like I'm kind of burning out, I'm like, all right, take the laptop. Like it's your turn. And we kind of jump back and forth, I would say. There's not really like it's kind of random, to be quite honest. It's when I feel like all my ideas are kind of fizzling out, I give him the laptop, or I'm like, all right, let's brainstorm. Let's try and go back and forth between what we want to create in this issue.
To just add on to that, the previous issues, the final say was the best of my ability. that was just, that's what we're going to go with. But I'd say now it's kind of like all boxes need to be checked. We have our artist, Vin, who does an amazing job. So we want to make sure, hey, is he happy with it? He usually is, because he does a great job. Is Sam happy with it? Am I happy with it? And once we get all 3 boxes checked, then it's kind of like, okay, now we can move on to the next one.
So many aspiring comic book creators really struggle with time management. How do you manage your time effectively to meet deadlines and maintain consistency in your work?
That's a good question. Go Trey. You go first.
I was going to say, we didn't always start off where we are now. It's something that's going to happen over time. Because I think a lot of times when you're new to something, at least us, we didn't understand like the exact time frame. People who are outside the industry just think, oh, it's a comic, they're just drawing. It's a 1-2, it's done. There's so much to making a comic, which I guess people wouldn't understand. So I guess when we first started, it was a huge learning curve of, oh, you have the writing, and then you have the dialogue. But then once you draw it, you got to get your composition correct. Is your shading correct? You have different speech bubbles, different dialogue bubbles, and there's so much to it that we just weren't privy to beforehand. But I would say now what helps us is we have so much written in advance. So when the time comes around, it's kind of just ready to go. Just kind of put it in a different format, send it to our artist. We'll do an edit here or there, but it's kind of be prepared for the next issue beforehand.
I would agree with Trey on pretty much all that. I mean, it really is, it's a learning curve, like when we first started, it was like, realistically speaking, was like 7 to 10 months. And we're like, oh, we're only going to be able to put out an issue a year. How do people put out like 5 issues a year? I don't get it. So it's like really trying to learn how to improve the timeline, how to be realistic. I think a lot of people kind of aren't looking themselves in the face, be like, wow, this took a while. They're kind of pushing it off. Now, like I want to say our timeline with Vin, we're looking about 4 to 6 months production-wise. And that's not like including Kickstarters and all the add-on pages that we put in there, as far as like some of our Kickstarter tiers, we're going to have to do like thank you pages and all these different things to kind of include in the final issue. I would say just pages 1 through 24, you're looking at about a 4-month timeline, which is, in my opinion, a lot better than where we were. And we're doing whatever we can to improve on that. But it's really just what took us a really long time this time around. What wasn't a really long time last time around. And really just trying to improve whatever you can during this process. Because like Trey said, like it's not like, hey, you just made a book, great job. Like there's so many different aspects to this. And like for us, when we first started, like we wanted it to be the best it could. And I still think we hold that bar for ourselves on dialogue, on art, panel flow, on speech bubbles, getting creative, like putting everything.
Speaking of, I have to cut you off. It took us, like 2-3 hours just to pick a font?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Realize that's actually harder than you think.
Yeah.
Because you have to match the style and
100%. And you have to, for anyone trying to get in the comic book industry, don't just pick any font, because there's licenses. You don't want to get sued because you have a certain font, okay? Which we had to consider. We are like, this font's awesome. Oh, we can't find a license that we can use, that we can buy, that we can actively use letters. Okay.
Have you checked out Blambot? I believe they have several that are free to use, license free. So.
Yep. So, but that's another thing to consider. So there's so many different things, I think, attached to all these different categories of a comic book that you have to consider and just be realistic. Like if something's working or something isn't working, you may not have the answer right now, but like devise a plan to maybe fix that, or at least get on the road to fixing that. Because some of the stuff we deal with on a day-to-day basis, we're still trying to find viable solutions for. So it's really just being adaptable to this genre.
Speaking of the genre, as creators of Raze, what initially sparked your interest in creating a horror comic, and how do you settle on the concept for this particular story?
I'd say, as far as picking horror, that's a genre that we kind of liked for a while. I mean, I grew up watching a lot of horror movies, and a lot of things like gore, like the Halloween stuff always interested me. I think Sam would agree when I say the same thing for him. As far as like picking the stuff that kind of goes into the comic, it was really just about the things that we enjoyed when we were younger. A lot of art and like artistry, they say you always take inspiration from things you like. So it was really an accumulation of that. But how can we put like our own little kind of spin on it? But you guys will probably see in like a lot of our first few issues, we make references to all of our favorite horror works of art, like books and games and movies. I think we gave like a shout out to like Resident Evil at the end of like #2. But the characters in the current arc are based on characters from Halloween. A lot of the stuff we have, we just kind of throw in there just to give like homage to. So it's.
I would say, yeah, we're very much horror fans. We that's where it kind of all started. But I want to say for Raze, and I don't know if Trey would agree with this, but we wanted to tell this story because I think growing up as we were initially like zombie fans, like that was a lot of the horror movies that we kind of gravitated towards was the zombie genre. But we always noticed, and no offense to anyone who's done anything in the zombie genre, is that sometimes it wasn't taken as seriously as it should have. It was kind of like very like, ha ha ha, this is what's happening. They're undead, they're dumb, they're stupid. And it was always like this thing for Raze, which if people don't know by now, Raze literally means when the foundation crumbles. So at the core of everything, that's what Raze is, whether it's society, the characters, the infected, the environment. It's kind of all circles around that idea. And when we were growing up, it was always like, hey, these are zombies. You have to deal with them. No one really talked about what was going on with the infection. It was either you're sick or you're a zombie. And we kind of wanted to tell that middle part and kind of explore that middle part. And I think that's what you're going to see if you've either read issue 1 or issue 6. That's the core of the story is, okay, what is this infection? What is it about? How do these characters blend with this? How do these environments blend with it? And that's kind of the over-encompassing idea of Raze.
A lot of new creators don't realize that research itself can be extremely crucial, especially for a genre like horror. What kind of research and preparation do you do before diving into a new project like Raze?
Take it away, Trey.
I can't tell you how much research I've done. It's just for the sake of the infection itself. I think I've read maybe 50 different articles. I've read like 5 different books so far. I have 4 I just bought. Writer's Guide to Medicine. Anyone, even if it's not like horror related, it's going to be your best friend. It goes over every symptom, what the signs are, what you can do to fix things. So just because I'm a huge stickler for finding plot holes, like when I'm watching something, I'm like, oh, well, what about this? And I'll just keep going further and further of, oh, but does this make sense? So I'm trying to cover bases in case I meet a fan like me who's going to try and poke holes in something. Impossible. And the thing is, the research is never done. It never is, because I'll go back and be like, all right, was I correct here? Did I use it the right way? So the research never stops. It's just endless. But I think it overall makes it a better kind of story, depending on what you're writing. If you're going to go something more fantasy where the rules are what you make it, you probably won't do as much research. But at this point, I kind of enjoy it.
I always loved the research aspect of it. And so many creators are like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Man. Let's see how well your comic does. And
what I was going to say is I cannot wait for the day that we're at a Comic-Con and a fan decides to challenge you, Trey. I'm going to be waiting for that day. Challenge Trey. We're begging you. Challenge this man. No, but I tip my hat to Trey because I think a thing that we talked about a lot was there is a certain amount of realism in this comic. Like the environment we take from real places, the infection, we try to derive it to something that could actually happen. Obviously, it's a comic book, so it can get as close as we possibly can. But I mean, when we first started, he had this whole idea for pretty much what the infection would be. And what it would be like. I knew what the infected how they should act, how they should behave, but it was really taking that idea and being like, okay, what could make, like, how could that happen? Like, just not another zombie virus. Like, how could it be so kind of human in there? They're animalistic. What kind of virus could make this happen? And as close as I think we could get, I think he's been able to really like hone down the realism of that, and this being a real possibility as close as we possibly can get to that idea.
Yeah, we did that backwards because we did what they look like, what they act like without doing the research. So I'm like, oh, we did this. How can I make this plausible? And we did this. How can this be plausible? But I think overall it kind of turned out the way we wanted it to. But like I said, I enjoy it. So I mean, if school had more things pertaining to this, I would have got straight A's all through school. Write your thesis on a zombie apocalypse, make it realistic. I would have aced every single class.
I actually see them starting to introduce more classes like this in high schools. There's one high school that's close to where I live. They actually have a comic book class where they walk you through, this is how you do your research. This is how you do
cool.
The lettering and everything like that.
Oh my God,
it's insane. It's here in Idaho. And I was so mad. I was like, they never had this when I was growing up.
Yeah, right.
You kind of mentioned this a little bit before, but comics often involve a balance between long-term planning and improvisation. Can you share your approach to pacing and plotting, Raze, over the long run while allowing those unexpected developments?
For Raze, as I mentioned, we had a lot of it kind of pre-written. So we do break it up into arcs. So, for example, we know, all right, this arc starts here. It's going to end here. We have our main story points in between X amount. Let's say we have 4 main story points. As far as improvising, that really comes down to an issue-to-issue basis. Because a lot of times when we're doing this, 24 pages comes pretty quick. Before we know it, we're on page 20 or page 23, 24. I'm like, oh, well, we want to introduce this. Maybe we can't fit it. We can put it in the next issue. Or there'll be this one thing here that this character said. Oh, what can we do with that? You know, how can that one piece of dialogue help us write the next issue? And a lot of people don't realize it. This is a funny little story. When we did issue 1 and 2, because 2, they were stuck on that bridge, like you guys read. And we said, well, how are they stuck? How can we get them unstuck? Or why are they stuck? They're in this car. So we went back and we noticed that a character's like he's staring at something and we never show what it was. So we edited the page afterwards of like the cops dropping the keys. So that part in issue 2, when he says, I have the keys, that's how they get in. That was all improvised. That was it.
Yeah.
6 months after the fact.
Yeah. He's not wrong. It's crazy because we read comic books growing up, but it's like, I think our project has longevity to it because there's so many different, I think, facets that we're going to get into about the story and about the infection and about these environments. But it really is like trying to come up with like these arcs where it's like, okay, we have 8 characters. Like, that's a lot of characters. Like, you read a comic, there's like 2. So we have 4 times the amount of characters. And if we have 5, 6 issues, who's important enough to show what's going on with them? Because we can't show everybody. We'd love to show everybody. But again, these pages come by quick. And just to show like one conversation sometimes takes 2, 4, 5, 6 pages. So it is really picking our punches where we can. But the cool thing is, Trey was just talking about like this. What we're calling our first arc is the first 3 issues are the introduction. But issue 4, I want to say to almost the next 5 to 6 issues is called the Junkyard arc. That wasn't planned. Let's see where this goes. And honestly, it's like, to me, one of the coolest first arcs of a comic I've read because there's so many different facets of. Issue 5 was a chase scene. We had issue 4 was almost like this very morale forward issue of, do we kill an infected? Do we not? And now we have issue 6 where it's almost like this manhunt for a child. So it's like, there's so many different ideas that we had, and to make it feel like it's something different every time around is our goal. We don't want you to feel like it's the same tropey horror zombie genre. We want to make you think. We want the action. We want the drama. We want the comedy where we can put it, just to make it feel different every time around.
The way you guys talk, it seems like you guys have known each other since you were little kids. How did you two meet?
It was a long time ago now. We met in 7th grade, which was that 06, 07?
I think that was 2007, around that.
Yeah, 2007. I saw Tre and he terrified me, and then I found out he was a gentle giant. And then it was like literally the cliche best friend story. I'll never forget. I went over his house the first time and we were like hanging out on his couch or whatever. And he was just like, hey, you want some like chicken wings? I'm like, yes, I would love some chicken wings. Then instantaneously best friends from that point on.
That would do it. Chicken wings are that good.
But I mean, we were also like, the thing is like, we just kind of like clicked. Like we listened to the same music. We had the same taste. We love the horror genre, and I think that's what we spent most of our childhood watching. This man had like 900 channels, so like we were just watching movies all day and just laughing and just having a good time.
Collaboration is such a key factor, but there are creative differences that can arise. How do you guys handle disagreements or different artistic visions in the creative process? And how does that affect your friendship versus actually affect the comic itself?
I wouldn't say it happens often, but there are quite a few times where we both strongly believe this is the direction we got to go. Mm-hmm. There's something that needs to happen. And we'll just digress further and further into places we probably shouldn't go. I think it's better now to where it'll continue to the next day of like, all right, we're not getting anywhere. Let's just leave it as it is right now. We'll address it like the next day or something like that. It definitely happens, but I do think it's good because having another person to kind of give you pushback on your idea, I think is something that I think more writers should have, because you never know how other people are going to perceive your idea. I understand it's your creation, it's your craft. You want to go with it, but ultimately, if it's not received well by other people, the project does fall a bit flat. So I think having that pushback and someone who pushes back so strongly just makes you better as far as writing goes. So it kind of sucks in the moment when we have those heated debates, but afterwards you kind of come out of it a little bit better.
Yeah, I would agree with everything Tre's saying. The only thing, there was literally one, I don't remember what it was. It might have been like issue 5 or something, but we had like this very heated debate, and I think it was like going on very long. It was like 2 or 3 days. And we were both we were both butting heads. And I think at the end of it, like once we all cooled down and we figured it out, he said it perfectly when we were having the conversation. He's like, it sucks that like sometimes we don't see eye to eye, but it just means that we both really care about this project and we want the best for it. And I think that's the common ground. And if you can kind of get over yourself and be like, all right, like I have someone who, even if you don't agree with whatever their opinion or perspective is on the idea, they want what they think is the best for the project. So it's really just like meeting in the middle 95% of the time. Because like you said, argue about something and they'll be like, yo, why are you wearing purple today? That's stupid. And then it just like it goes into a tangent. It's not even what we were even talking about. Digresses. And I'm like, dude, we're not even having a conversation about the comic.
It was about the font. That's what we were arguing about for 3 days.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what it was about. Yep.
Remember, font is important.
Yep, very.
Well, ever since the shutdown, there's been a surge in Kickstarter campaigns, which have been amazing for the comic book industry. So many indie comics are actually getting the spotlight now, especially considering Marvel and DC had that famous pencils down order. So what do you believe sets Raze apart from other projects, and why should supporters back your book?
I would say what sets us apart from these other stories, and I would always say this, it's a little hard when you're first starting out to kind of differentiate or find your footing. But Raze to us, why it's so different is it's this crazy what if story. It's grounded, but it's this larger than life. It's very character driven, but it's very, what's the word I'm looking for, like story driven. There's just so much, I think, packed into one little thing here. And we're starting at one point. I can't really give away too much, but it's really going to take a huge turn, and it's coming up very soon in the story. But at least to me, there's really nothing else like it. I mean, the zombie genre, there's a lot of work out there, but other than your big ones like Walking Dead, of course, is a huge pioneer of the zombie genre. At least from what I've read, I don't know if there's anyone other out there, but sometimes they do kind of cross over each other a little too much. At least as far as what we have I haven't seen too much of like the same kind of genre or kind of themes that we're introducing. So it's definitely a little bit out there. And I can say it's a little out there because the way we come up with our ideas now or how we write is a little bit out there too. So we kind of get out of our comfortable space to write this. So
I would just say if you're on Kickstarter, obviously it is kind of close to the Halloween side. So you are going to see a lot of horror comics. But I've always said you come for the art, you stay for the story. I think if you pick up issues 1 through 6, you're going to be surprised at what we try to deliver and how we try to deliver. I think all the themes we try to put across. If you go to our Kickstarter right now, it's going to give you kind of a rundown of this is not just a horror comic. It may have horror themes. It may feel like a horror book, but a lot of the elements are going to be very close to home. I think we talked about issue 3 earlier. One of my favorite pages is almost like a PTSD, like anxiety attack from one of the survivors. I don't know a whole lot of comics that are trying to touch down on, I think, themes like that.
Very few. Nothing in the mainstream, but very, very few in the indie sector actually dive into PTSD and any mental illness.
Right. So the thing is, too, is like we always talked about, the environment is the infected, but the story is the characters. And it's always going to be the characters, and I think the shenanigans and the scenarios they get into, they get elevated from the infected, but the characters would still be the characters, whether the infected were there or not. If you're a fan of action, horror, mangas, anime, I think you'll be a fan of this. And we try to give some cool rewards as well. We try to think outside the box. So if any of that interests you, I think our Kickstarter is for you.
That actually brings me to my next question. Managing a Kickstarter campaign involves just setting goals. Can you discuss the specific milestones you hope to achieve with your campaign and how they contribute to the project's success?
Yeah, so this one was different because if you go back into our Kickstarter history, it was kind of like an issue 1 through 5 Kickstarter where we raised $2,000, and that was to, I think, cover mostly the cost of production, prints, and all that good stuff. A lot of it, though, we were doing out of our own pocket, and Tre was the artist, so there wasn't a whole lot of funding as far as like art-wise, but a lot of the prints, and you had stickers, keychains, posters, all that good stuff obviously cost money. This one was more about setting a lower goal, and you're going to see, we're pretty close to getting funded. Once we get funded, we got a bunch of cool stretch goals that we're going to be releasing on this Kickstarter and get a lot of people excited about some more rewards that whether you are a $1 backer or you were a $500 backer, that you're still a part of the party. So we have a lot of stretch goals in mind, and this Kickstarter was really, we're paying out of pocket for this, but it's really, it's on both sides. I think Kickstarter is a good way to market your comic now, and it's just one of those things where it's a way to go on these press tours, get your name out, and while you're doing that, give people a cool product, give people some awareness on what you're trying to create and what you're trying to give back to them. I think a lot of the times it's coming up with ideas, I think, on this Kickstarter where people would want the rewards, and that's probably the most challenging part of this whole thing. If I'm going on a Kickstarter, I'd be like, what do I want? What do I personally want? Trying to find that right medium, which I think anytime you do a Kickstarter, you learn a lot. You think something may do good, may not. You think something may do terrible, it does amazing. You're like, what the heck? I thought this was going to sell, or this wasn't going to sell. So it really is testing the waters and just having an open mind and learning as much as you can during this process.
So crowdfunding itself can just be a roller coaster of emotions. What first inspired you to turn to Kickstarter for Raze, and why do you keep going back? And what challenges have you encountered during your various campaigns?
The main Kickstarter guy, he just shows me, I go, yeah, I like it. And then
he's like, send it. No, I would say when we were doing our comic, it's funny because we did issues 1 through 4. We didn't do any crowdfunding. We were just putting them out. We were trying to get them in stores. We were posting about it on socials. But there is this thing, I think, in the comic book industry that you're kind of seeing now where it's almost like frowned upon if you're not doing like a crowdfunding campaign with your comic, because it's almost like, I want to say, so mainstream, especially if you're an indie creator. What kind of gravitated us towards Kickstarter And I want to say is like way back in the day, we didn't really even do a Kickstarter. We tried to do it, but we didn't know much about it. And we kind of gave up halfway through. But we saw kind of how many people gravitated toward it, what it looked like. And I think me and Trey kind of talked about when we were doing Kickstarter, like all the different reward aspects and like what we could kind of play around with and how it was set up. And I think after doing the first one, I think we had like a lot of positive feedback on it. Not saying we wouldn't go to another platform, but again, these aren't easy. Like these Kickstarters, like emotionally, mentally drain you. You're going 30 days trying to raise money, and you're trying to post about it every day and get the name out because you want it to do good. You want people to get their books, and you want to put out something that is genuine and something that people will enjoy. And the idea every time around is, how can we make this thing cooler? How can we make this thing bigger? How can we make this thing more efficient with people who have never read our stories? You know, we're now 6 issues in. Like, our biggest thing has been, okay, how do we, if you haven't read an issue, how do we catch you up where we don't spoil the entire 6 books that we're putting in front of you? So it is really trying to gravitate towards someone who's read all 5 issues and someone who's read nothing. So I think like trying to find that middle point, which me and Trey have had many conversations about, and really just trying to bring anybody and everybody who wants to be a fan of Raze or who wants to get invested in this project with us. It really is about the journey with the fans and you guys seeing our growth and our potential as we move forward in the series.
I would also say, just to kind of add on to what he's talking about, it's also because when you do a Kickstarter with people who haven't done it don't understand, is the beginning of it and the end of it is going to be your most active. People at the beginning, they're feeling the passion. They're all about backing it. This is going to do great. In the middle, it's gonna die down a little bit. There are people hesitant. What if it doesn't fund? So on and so forth. And then the last few days is when you get that surge again. But I think it's also tough with Kickstarter because you see so many projects get funded. As soon as you open up Kickstarter, they show all the funded projects. So you go, oh, well, they got funded. What if I don't? And it just kind of puts a little pressure on you, especially in this industry, because there's so many great projects that get funded. And we see a lot of our friends have such successful Kickstarters too, which hats off to them. But it does kind of put a bit of pressure on you of like, hey, if I don't get funded, am I like not as good as them? So on and so forth.
So that's social pressure as well.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I've seen books that get freaking 100K on Kickstarter. And you're like, why can't I have that? You know what I mean? But it's like you really have to kind of stay in your own lane and just know like you're putting out something with quality. It's coming out of your brain and it's becoming something physical. So already hats off to you for doing that. Like that's a big W. And I think me and Trey always talk about like don't compare yourself to anybody. You know what I mean? You're going to produce at your rate. You're going to produce at your speed and just focus on that. You can kind of, I know it's social media. Everyone kind of compares and sees different things, but just stay focused. And you got 30 days to just give everything you got to fund a book. So just do that. And at the end of it, like, it wasn't that bad. You got funded. It's great. And you're going to be on the other side of that fence. You know, but I would say, again, like Trey was saying, don't get hung up on other people's projects. I know it's hard. Trust me. It's very hard. But you just got to kind of stay focused and make sure that you're doing whatever you can to get your book funded.
Rewards are extremely important for a Kickstarter campaign. I'd like to know kind of what are some of the unique rewards or incentives that you came up with, and what was the thought process in coming up with said rewards?
This one was a little bit tough as far as like this Kickstarter, because this one, I would say, not that we pulled back, but this issue 6, it really was like this thing like, okay, we need to do another Kickstarter. How can we do it where we do something exciting, we do something new, and it's not completely just a rewash version of our last Kickstarter? Because that was the biggest thing going into this. And I talked to Trey about this multiple times. I don't want it to just be, hey, let's do this again, but let's just kind of do what we did last time. That's off to our, because it wasn't just us. Like we had me, Trey, our PR guy, Cody Dull, who was constantly on the phone with us. We were brainstorming what could we do that would be exciting? What could we do that makes sense reward wise? Coolest thing I think is our entry level. We kind of we wanted people who maybe have never read us before, the very first reward is getting that issue 1, which I believe is the $4 tier. So if you've never read our story before, you kind of get the first issue and you get to see what we're about, and it's only $4. And then
I will say it is amazing issue. I love that scene where the guy is just sitting there and like it's good. Pick it up, everybody. Hey, here's the guy I was talking about.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, when we talked about like what was going to be the entry level tier, we wanted something that was like kind of user friendly to everybody. If you've never read our issue before, or you've never read our comic before, you still get an entry point to that. That was our biggest thing. The second tier is the $5, the issue 6 digital. So you get a digital copy of issue 6. You get all the awesome artwork with our new style from Vincius Oliveira, who absolutely killed at this issue. So hats off to him. And then the next tier is going to be the $15 tier, where you get a physical copy of issue 6. So if you want, I know I've talked to a lot of comic book readers. If you're more of a physical kind of person, definitely pick up the paperback book. And then one of my favorite tiers, $20, you get a variant cover of issue 6. This is actually our first like white cover we've ever done, which I just think looks super, super cool and super clean.
Yeah, it was such a departure. As I was looking, I was like, whoa, that's different. I love it.
Yeah, right? So, and props off to Marco DeFilio. He's the artist for Path of the Pale Rider, which is one of our friends. And he actually did that cover. And props to Trey, because he came up with the design for that cover. It was all him on what the variant cover should look like. And I love it. It's incredible. I'm super happy with that. But if you want a variant cover and you want the physical copy, that's your $20 tier right there. And then the $30, which I think is an absolute steal, you get all 6 issues for $30. You get it in digital style, and pretty much we send it right to your email, and you can pretty much get right into the Raze Comics and pretty much read them back to back, and you can see how all the whole story is playing out. And then another, I think, incredible offer. You get all 6 issues digitally, and you also get our variant cover from our artist, Vincius Oliveira, who absolutely killed it. The cool thing about this, though, is that cover is actually going to be foil. So it's going to be our first foil comic book cover, which is super rad, and I cannot wait to see them.
Nice.
It's going to be pretty cool. I'm real excited about that. And hats off to Trey again, because he's the one who came up with the idea for something a little bit different for a variant cover and what kind of material we would use for that.
That is a sick design too.
Yes. And then this one, I think anybody in the indie community would be crazy not to jump on this, and we only have 4 slots.
Totally agreed.
You get to place your comic book ad in here. If you're trying to get your name out as a comic book, a creator, or your project just in general, $50, you get placed pretty much in every issue that we print. So if we're in stores, we're on the Northeast. If you're somebody who's, in California, Texas, that's just another market you can hit. So, I mean, if this was me, I would hop on it. $50, that's a steal in my opinion.
Yeah.
Pretty much, I would say it's free marketing, but at a certain point, it does become free marketing. So, I think, if you're trying to get your name out there, an awesome tier to get invested into.
If someone were to purchase that, would that also show up in the digital comics as well?
Yep. So you get physical and digital. So any issue that we pretty much print out for issue 6, or just pretty much make any issue 6, your comic book ad would be in there. So I think it's an incredible offer, and it's our way of trying to give back to the community, to anybody trying to get their name out there.
What prompted you to actually start placing ads in the comic as a tier?
This is all Cody, our PR guy. He's done a crazy amount of interviews, and the thing about this is issue 6 was really like about how can we make this really different. Like last Kickstarter, we did a lot of physical rewards, but how can we do things that people would want? And also like trying to, I think we all had this like level of, okay, we're a part of the indie community. So like, what can we do that makes a tier that could work, that could potentially give back? I think the people I've met in the indie community are nothing but nice and crazy hard workers. So anything that
100% agree.
Yeah. So anything we can kind of give back during our process, we're gonna try and do. It was all Cody. He was like, hey, why don't we do some ads? And I'm like, And me and Trey talked about it, like, yeah, we've never done ads before. I mean, we love the indie community. Why don't we do something like that? See what the turnaround is. Like we talked about earlier, it's all about seeing, does it work? Does it not work? Would they want something like this? So it really is just testing the waters to see if people would want this. And if they do want it, we'll keep bringing it back. These are one of my favorite tiers, by the way. You get drawn in as a character. So
that is cool.
You kind of get the visual representation of this. So I don't want to spoil anything, but there is some things in this comic where we're going a little bit backwards in the story. So it's an opportunity where you could become a character or you could become someone in the comic. And I think if you've ever wanted to be in a comic book or you ever want to be part of a story, this is your chance. I think this one has a few slots too. We only have limited slots on this because just for how we wrote the issue. But yeah, it's definitely one of a really cool tier that we came up with.
I love that.
And then this one is actually props to Cody too, because he told me this idea and I did not understand it. So I'm going to try to be as concise and clear on this as possible. So the cool thing about this tier is we have 24 pages in the comic. When you buy this tier, you pretty much own the page. And what that means is we're going to send you a physical print of the page. So if you buy, like, if you really like page 6, you buy this tier and you pick whatever page you want, as long as it's available, we're going to send it over to you. You know, there's 24 pages. So when we send this to you, you're going to get, you're going to obviously get everything included with this. You're going to get, the physical book, but you're also going to get an 8x11 for whatever page that you decided to pick. And it's pretty much like you owning a piece of our project. You get 1/24 of the pie.
That is cool.
Yeah. So.
Oh, that is cool.
And then the very last tier we came up with, which I think is one of the coolest things. If you want something custom, this is the way to go. We did it last Kickstarter and we wanted to bring it back, but this time around we got our artist Vin, who's going to be doing this. You get to be drawn in as one of the infected. And shout out to Andrew Dodge, because this is actually him on last Kickstarter. Yep. And so you get a pretty big print too. You're going to get an 11x17 custom print on this. It's going to be in black and white. We haven't done any yet, but I've already talked to Vin, and we are going to be adding a little bit of, I would say, some shading on it to really give you that manga feel, that you're in this comic book kind of feel. So, and I believe for that one, there's only 5 slots because he is actively doing production as well. So we didn't want to overcrowd him. But if you want to get yourself drawn in as an infected, as a zombie, might we say, this is the way to go as well.
We will have the link to the Kickstarter in the description below. Could you tell us about, where can we pick up your other comics?
Yeah, so I will say is me and Trey have talked. We're working very hard on getting a website going because after this Kickstarter, a lot of people, I think, are going to be looking for our books or trying to read our books. But we are on a digital platform called Global Comics right now. I do have to update our Amazon. I don't believe issue 5 is up there, but you can get issues 1 through 4 through Amazon as well. But yeah, if you want to read any of these digitally, you can always go to Global Comics. Most of these issues, you just pretty much can get right in and get a few preview pages, and you think it's right up your alley. You're able to jump right on in. Doing whatever we can to put out as many issues as we can and give you guys access to that. So if you are a fan of anything we talked about, I definitely think come follow us on Kickstarter, come follow us on Global Comics, and come get invested in our story. We got a lot of story to tell, so buckle on in. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
All the reason to get that ad tier. We were number 2 on Global Comics for a little while, and you saw how many reads we got.
Yeah, so. Last year we were number 2 horror comic on the Global Comics platform, so that was pretty exciting. And
get that ad tier while you can.
Yep. So come for that number 1 spot, though. Watch out.
I love it. Before we wrap this up, I just wanted to know, beyond Kickstarter, what are your future plans for Raze? Without giving any plot lines or anything like that away, what are potential avenues for distribution, merchandise, or any other adaptions?
Let's see. I mean, as far as merchandise goes, I mean, we'll have a pretty standard array of merchandise. Eventually, we'll try and get into more of like clothing merchandise. Like I know we had hats we did last time. We'll probably see more of like that or like hoodies or whatnot. As far as merch goes, it's on like a simple. I'll give you the simplest answer. As far as other mediums, we haven't really talked about the next step for Raze. As far as the mediums go for Raze, it started off as other projects, as other mediums before we got into the comic industry. But it might branch out into other things. It all just depends on where we go from here, how popular it gets, and what else we can do to make this project kind of stand out a bit more. But as far as the storyline goes, we got some crazy things coming very soon, actually. Like we were talking about the arcs. So issue 6 will be out soon. We've got 2 issues left of this arc after issue 6. No, sorry, 3. Those 3 you do not want to miss. I can tell you that right now. These are huge. We've been waiting so long to get to this, and it's going to set the next arc so very well. So not something anyone wants to miss.
I was going to say is I think what we've been trying to focus on, I think with this Kickstarter and I think moving forward is really just creating a good fan base. I think that's something that as an indie creator, and I'll say it blatantly and honestly, is something we struggled with, is trying to get people to come back to our book and trying to get people to get involved in our project. And that's all we want. We want to tell a story and we want people to get excited about it. So as far as pushing forward with our plans, we are going to do everything we can to create. We're trying to create a loyal fan base, and we're trying to do whatever we can. People excited about the story, the characters, the infected, the gore, the action, the drama, the comedy, everything. It's a big umbrella. What we're trying to do is we're trying to tell you a really high-end story, and we're trying to really push certain elements and really break down what the horror genre can be. I think it can be so many things without it just being it by itself. So I think as far as us telling these stories, like Trey said, like these next 3 issues, including 6, because 6 is insane as well, it's going to make you think that this is a different comic. I've seen the pages, and I personally haven't read anything that we're trying to do. I think Trey can agree on that. We'll see how well that goes over, but it's going to get, I think, it's going to get into some of the darker, deeper storytelling that we're trying to into this project that I think you haven't seen in a while. And as far as the mediums, we're trying to be wherever people can have us. We want to be in stores. We want to go to these events. We want to go on these interviews and do whatever we can to really push out the name of Raze. This is something we worked, close to 2 decades now. 2007, we're about 4 years away from being 20 years on Raze. We want people to be excited, and we want people to come back, and we want people to have fun. That's why we did this. That's why we continue to do this. All BS aside, if you're not having fun with your projects, you're not going to see it to the end. There's times where me and him will be crying of laughter on our couch because we come up with just a dumb, stupid idea. And even if it doesn't make the comic, we're still having fun creating this thing. We're still being the kids that we were in 2007. And just having a fun time. And that's why we started this. That's why we're continuing it.
You brought up, the different type this fits into, just having so much fun with it. The one thing I absolutely love about this is, all that craziness is going on, but that's so much of it is situational. This doesn't forget to be a human story first.
Right.
And that's what I love about this.
We talked about it. It's like, we have the zombies in the background, but this is almost like a character study. Like it's like getting involved in different personalities of different people and seeing like everyone's going to react different. That's why it's so interesting to do some of these issues. You don't know who you're going to side with. And when we talk to people like, who would you side with? And that's what creates this thing of like, we just had the other night where me and Trey were arguing about Dragon Ball Z and power scaling characters. And we were arguing for like an hour, and it's like, that's what we want. We want people like to get so invested that they're having arguments and they're like getting in each other's faces and like, no, this person would be this person would be that person. And it's like, that's the fun of these projects. You know what I mean? You kind of get engulfed in their world and like how it works.
Last but not least, is there any advice that you would give potential comic creators, or even those people who are just, hey, I have a project that I want to get on Kickstarter?
I would say, and this is going to sound like a half-ass answer, you just got to do it. Too many times, I think the thing is people, they get excited about an idea up until they have to do it. They'll make X amount of plans, they won't follow through with it. We kind of went in the first one kind of blind. We had no idea what we were doing, but we still went out there and did it. And even though the very first one wasn't successful, I think that's the best thing you can do, is just don't think of the outcome, think of the action itself. Get yourself out there, you got your best foot forward, and just kind of essentially wing it. I don't I want to give you like a crazy philosophical answer, but you get out there and wing it, man, and you'll learn a lot.
No, that's actually great advice, because I've seen so many people that just get hung up overthinking it or something like that, and then they'll weigh themselves down and, hey, I can't do it.
Right.
Just get out and do it. Just do it.
I mean,
not to sound like Shia LaBeouf, but
yeah,
do it.
Do it. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Yeah, no, I mean, I kind of am piggybacking off of Trey a little bit. I mean, I would just say welcome the failure. Don't get hung up on that you failed. Like, use that as a tool. Use that as a learning experience. You don't know what's going to work, and you don't know what will work. And I think if you have an open mind to that and you're willing to be like, okay, I could fail this time, but next time I'm not going to. Or next time I'm going to do this to ensure that I might not fail, because you don't know. And I think if you have an open mind to that and you're willing to see past, yeah, you made one mistake and this didn't happen, but now it's time to go on to the next thing. Now it's time to get better at the next thing. Now it's time to create an action plan for how it can work. And that's kind of what we did. I mean, we're not making millions off comics for our first issue. We're still on that struggle bus, so everyone hop on, all right? And yeah, we're doing the best job we can with, I think, the resources we have. And you're going to make mistakes. There's going to be certain failures, but don't get hung up on that. Like, if you just keep your head down, you get the work done, people are going to start to notice you. People are going to see what you're trying to put out, and they're going to get invested. You just got to keep your head down and get it done.
Thank you so much. We have Tre and Sam from Raze Comics, one of the just best horror genre comics I've run into in years. I love it. I absolutely love it. Thank you again for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Matt.
All right, now everybody, like, share, subscribe. Go check out their Kickstarter. Go support these guys. They need it. They deserve it. They just have an amazing story. Trust me on this one. And go check out on Global Comics. They're on Crypto Comics. We'll put the link in the description. Everybody like, share, subscribe, and thank you again.
Thank you.